Standing in the bridal suite of the Grand Beaumont estate, surrounded by $40,000 worth of imported white lilies, I realized that every single person in this room was a predator. My makeup artist was blending concealer over the dark circles I'd developed from 3 nights of sleeplessness, whispering about how lucky I was to marry into the Hawthornvale dynasty. My bridesmaids, women I'd known since college, were sipping vintage champagne that cost more than a month's rent, laughing about the power couple headlines we'd surely make. But as I stared at my reflection, the heavy silk of my custom-made gown feeling like lead against my skin, I wasn't a bride. I was a witness. I was a woman who had found the blueprint to her own destruction, and instead of running, I had decided to rewrite the ending. My name is Leora Kane. And in exactly 60 minutes, I'm gonna commit social and financial homicide. And the best part? I'm gonna do it with a smile. I met Cassian Hawthornvale at a charity gala for architectural preservation. I am a self-made woman, an architect who built a firm that specialized in restoring historic mansions. Cassian was the preservation king, the heir to a real estate empire that spanned 3 generations. Or so the glossy magazines told us. He was charming in that old world way, pulling out chairs, remembering my favorite vintage of wine, and speaking about legacy with a passion that blinded me. For 2 years, he played the role of the supportive partner perfectly. When my firm landed the Century Project, a multi-billion-dollar restoration of the city's historic waterfront, he was the first one to toast my success. He didn't mind that I earned more than him. He didn't mind that my name was becoming more recognizable in the industry than his. Or at least, that's what I believed. His mother, Beatrice, was the gatekeeper of the Hawthornvale reputation. She was a woman made of ice and expensive pearls. From the moment Cassian introduced us, she treated me like an intruder. "The Vales don't work for money, Leora," she would say, her eyes scanning my outfit for any sign of new money desperation. "We are the money. Your little hobby of drawing buildings will have to take a back seat once the wedding bells ring. A Hawthornvale wife manages the household and the image. Nothing else." I thought it was just old-fashioned elitism. I didn't realize it was a warning. The tension began to peak 6 months before the wedding. Cassian's childhood sweetheart, Serafina, a woman whose family name was as old and as bankrupt as his, suddenly reappeared. She was family friends with Beatrice. She started showing up at our private dinners, our club events, and even my dress fittings. Beatrice would constantly compare us. "Serafina understands the weight of our crown, Cassian," she'd remark, loudly enough for me to hear. Cassian would always squeeze my hand and tell me she was just a lost soul his mother was helping. But then, the late-night board meetings started. Cassian's phone, which used to be open on the nightstand, was suddenly encrypted with a new biometric lock. He started asking detailed, almost intrusive questions about my firm's financial structure. He wanted to know about the intellectual property rights of my designs. He framed it as protecting our joint future. The true horror revealed itself only 4 days ago. I was working late at my studio when I received an anonymous email. The subject line simply read, "The price of your veil." Attached were scanned documents from the Hawthornvale Private Trust. I sat in the dim light of my office, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I scrolled through the PDF. The empire was a rotting corpse. They were $80 million in debt. They had leveraged their family estates to the hilt to cover Cassian's disastrous tech investments. They weren't looking for a wife for Cassian. They were looking for a venture capitalist they didn't have to pay back. But the deeper I dug, the darker it got. I found a draft of a post-nuptial amendment that Cassian's lawyers had prepared. It was a masterpiece of legal fraud. It contained clauses that would automatically transfer the ownership of my architectural firm to the Hawthornvale Trust in the event of any marital disharmony. A term they had defined so broadly it could mean anything from a disagreement over dinner to a filing for divorce. The night of the rehearsal dinner, I planted a high-end recording device in Cassian's private study at the Beaumont estate. I needed to know if he was a victim of his mother's pressure or a willing participant. At 2 o'clock in the morning, I retrieved the device and sat in my car, the heater blasting against the midnight chill. The audio was crystal clear. "Is the girl going to sign?" Beatrice's voice was sharp, devoid of the fake warmth she used in public. "She'll sign," Cassian replied, and the coldness in his tone made my blood turn to slush. "She's so obsessed with the idea of this grand union that she hasn't even had her own lawyers look at the final draft. She trusts me, Mother." It's almost pathetic. Once the I do's are whispered, her firm's assets will bail us out of the London litigation. And then, she can spend her days decorating the guest house while Serafina and I actually enjoy the fruits of her labor. And the child? Beatrice asked. If she has one, the trust controls the inheritance. Cassian chuckled. She's just the vessel and the bank account, nothing more. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat there in the silence of the parking lot, watching the moon reflect off the windshield. I felt a strange, terrifying calm. They had spent months planning a heist. I had 48 hours to plan a counteroffensive. I reached out to my firm's head of security, Marcus, a former military intelligence officer who owed me his career. I showed him the documents. I played him the audio. What do you want to do, Leora? He asked, his face grim. We can call the police, file for fraud. No, I said, my voice steady. The police will take years. The courts will be quiet. I want them to be destroyed in the only way that matters to them. In front of the world. I want their reputation to burn so bright that no Hawthorne Vale will ever be able to show their face in this city again. We spent the next 36 hours working in the shadows. We didn't just target the wedding. We targeted the live broadcast. The Hawthorne Vales had sold the exclusive streaming rights of the wedding of the century to a major lifestyle network to help pay for the catering. There were cameras everywhere. High definition, 4K cameras that would beam our love to 3 million viewers worldwide. Marcus gained remote access to the media server. We replaced the tribute video, a montage of our fake romance, with a very different kind of documentary. We synced the audio recordings to the legal documents. We prepared a digital paper trail of their bankruptcies, their frauds, and their secret offshore accounts. The bells of the estate chapel began to toll. It was time. My father, a man who believed in honor above all else, knocked on the door. He looked at me in my white dress, his eyes welling with pride. He had no idea he was walking his daughter into a cage. You look like an angel, Leora, he whispered. Thanks, Dad, I said, adjusting my veil. But today, I think I'd rather be the reckoning. As I stepped out into the hallway, I saw Serafina standing near the entrance, wearing a dress that was a shade too close to white, a smug grin on her face. I saw Beatrice at the front of the church, adjusting her fascinator, looking like a queen who had just secured her kingdom. And there was Cassian, standing at the altar, looking handsome, noble, and utterly treacherous. He smiled at me as the doors swung open. He reached out his hand, expecting me to take it and hand over my life, my hard work, and my future. I took his hand. It was cold. The priest began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. I looked at the giant LED screens flanking the altar. They were currently displaying a soft focus photo of our first date. In 5 minutes, the love story segment was scheduled to play. The world was watching. The elite were seated. The trap was set. But for the first time in months, I wasn't the one inside it. As the priest reached the part about, if any person can show just cause why they may not be lawfully joined together, I felt Cassian's grip tighten slightly. He was eager. He was ready to seal the deal. I leaned in, my lips brushing his ear as if I were whispering a sweet vow. I hope you're ready for your close-up, Cassian, I hissed, because the world is about to see exactly what a Hawthorne Vale is worth. His smile froze. He looked at me, confusion flickering in his blue eyes. And then, the screens went black. The air in the Grand Beaumont Chapel was thick with the scent of lilies and the hushed whispers of the city's most powerful families. Cassian's hand was still in mine, his palm slightly sweaty. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for the meaning behind my whisper. He tried to maintain his Prince Charming composure for the cameras, but I could see the tiny muscle jumping in his jaw. He knew something was wrong, but he was too arrogant to believe I could actually hurt him. The priest reached the pivotal moment. We shall now view a short tribute to the journey of Leora and Cassian, a testament to a love built on legacy and trust. The lights dimmed. The 300 guests turned their heads toward the massive 4K LED screens. Beatrice sat in the front row, her chin tilted up, ready to bask in the glory of the Hawthorne Vale image. The live stream indicator on the side of the screen was glowing green. 3 million people were watching. The screen didn't show our first date at the vineyard. It didn't show our engagement in Paris. Instead, a giant, high-resolution scan of a bank foreclosure notice appeared. It was the Hawthorne Vale family estate. The very building we were standing in, marked for government auction due to $12 million in unpaid taxes. The gasps from the audience were immediate, a wave of sharp intakes of breath that rippled through the pews like a physical blow. Cassian dropped my hand. His face went from confusion to a ghostly, sickly white. "What is this? Leora, what did you do?" he hissed, his voice cracking. I didn't answer. I just looked at the screen. The image shifted. Now it was a split screen. On the left was the post-nuptial amendment Cassian had drafted, with the predatory clauses highlighted in bright neon red, the parts where he planned to seize my architectural firm. On the right, the speakers of the chapel roared to life with the audio recording I'd captured in his study. She's so obsessed with the idea of this grand union that she hasn't even had her own lawyers look at the final draft. She trusts me, Mother. It's almost pathetic. Cassian's own voice echoed off the vaulted ceilings, bouncing back at him like a physical accusation. The guests began to murmur loudly. I saw Beatrice stand up, her face twisted in a mask of pure rage. She looked at the media booth, screaming for them to shut it off, but Marcus had encrypted the feed. He was 50 miles away, broadcasting from a secure server. There was no off switch for the truth today. The audio continued. The part about Serafina, the part about me being a vessel and a bank account. I turned to face Cassian. I wasn't the blushing bride anymore. I was the architect of his ruin. You wanted my company, Cassian? I asked, my voice amplified by the lapel microphone I was wearing. You wanted to use my hard work to pay for your mother's gambling debts and your failed investments? You thought I was pathetic for trusting you? The cameras, operated by the Lifestyle Network, were zooming in on his face. The cameramen knew a viral moment when they saw one. This wasn't a wedding anymore. It was a public execution of a reputation. Cassian stepped toward me, his hand raised as if to grab my arm. Shut up, Leora. You're delusional. This is a fabrication. Is it? I pulled a folded set of original bank statements from my bouquet, papers I had hidden among the flowers. I tossed them at his feet. Those are the offshore account numbers you tried to hide. Those are the signatures of your business partners, who are currently under federal investigation. I didn't just find out you were cheating on me, Cassian. I found out you were a criminal. Beatrice stormed up to the altar, her expensive silk dress rustling aggressively. You ungrateful little girl. We gave you a name. We gave you entry into a world you could never belong to. I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing but pity. Beatrice, your name is a debt-ridden lie. And as for your world, I've already designed and built a better one. Without your help, the chapel was in total chaos. Some guests were laughing. Others were filming on their phones. The Hawthorne Vale name was disintegrating in real time, but I wasn't finished. I looked directly into the main camera, the one broadcasting to the 3 million viewers. To my clients and my team at Kane Architecture, I said, my voice steady and professional. I want to reassure you that my company remains 100% under my control. I never signed the Hawthorne Vale papers. In fact, I've spent the last 48 hours filing for a permanent injunction and a fraud suit against Cassian and Beatrice Hawthorne Vale. My work, my designs, and my legacy are not for sale, and they certainly aren't for rent to a family of con artists. I turned back to Cassian. He looked small. For the first time, the prince looked like a beggar. The wedding is off, I said, unpinning my veil and letting it drop to the dusty floor. But don't worry about the catering. I've instructed the staff to pack up the food and donate it to the city's homeless shelters. At least someone will get something honest out of this day. I turned my back on the altar. I didn't run. I walked. My father was standing at the back of the aisle. He looked shocked, but as I got closer, I saw the glimmer of a smile on his face. He stepped aside and opened the massive oak doors for me. That's my girl, he whispered as I passed. I stepped out onto the marble portico. The sun was shining. The world felt quiet, fresh, and wide open. I stripped off the heavy diamond necklace Beatrice had forced me to wear, a family heirloom that I later found out was high-quality cubic zirconia, and tossed it into the fountain. I got into my own car, the one I had paid for with my own salary, and drove away from the Beaumont estate. I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was behind me. a house of cards, collapsing in the wind. 6 months later, the Hawthorne veils were a cautionary tale. Cassian was embroiled in a fraud trial that stripped him of his remaining assets. Beatrice had moved into a small apartment in a part of the city she used to mock. Serafina, of course, had vanished the moment she realized there was no money left to inherit. Kane architecture, on the other hand, thrived. My story had gone global. People didn't just want my designs. They wanted to support a woman who had stood her ground. I was sitting in my new studio, looking out over the city skyline. I realized then that the fairy tale isn't about finding a prince. It's about realizing you're the one holding the pen that writes your story. It's about understanding that your value isn't something someone gives to you. It's something you build, brick by brick, with your own two hands. To every woman watching this, we are taught from a young age to dream of the big day. We are taught that being a bride is the ultimate achievement. But I want to tell you something different. Your big day is the day you decide that you are enough. It's the day you realize that your career, your mind, and your self-respect are worth more than any diamond or any prestigious last name. Never let a man or his family make you feel like a silent partner in your own life. If you see the red flags, don't use them to build a tent and hide. Use them to light a fire and find your way out. Trust your gut, protect your work, and never, ever sign away your power for a seat at a table that was built on lies. So, I have to ask you, if you found out your partner was using you for your success just days before your wedding, would you walk away quietly, or would you make sure the whole world knew the truth? Have you ever had to choose between your heart and your hard-earned legacy? Let me know in the comments below.